Hi, Wooddale Church. It's Friday, and I want to offer you some encouragement in what feels like months and months of discouragement and bad news. But today, when I got up, I had my quiet time, and I turned open to Romans chapter 1, where I've been spending some time this week, slowly thinking and praying my way through that passage. I'm thankful I'm in Romans 1 because in Romans chapter 1, Paul says, in essence, the hope of the world is the gospel. And he says, you, meaning the Romans and us, we've been privileged to receive the gospel and experience the life change that it brings. He says we also have the privilege to bring the gospel to others, this message of Jesus and his love. He says in that passage of scripture, we are to exemplify and then encourage them to believe, obey, and glorify God through the gospel. He says any other answer, any other solution leads to injustice because it's without the gospel, it's without the hope of Jesus. And so this is not a time to get our eyes focused on politics and politicians. Let's keep our eyes focused on Jesus, and let's make sure we are living out his life and that we are giving his life away, this wonderful, powerful message called the gospel of Jesus Christ. Paul says it is the power of God to salvation. And he says this for everyone, Jew and Gentile, male and female, slave and free. Everyone deserves this gospel. And so the question I keep asking myself is, am I making sure that everyone has access to this gospel? Is there anything in my life or in our church life that would prevent people from both experiencing, seeing, and hearing the power of the gospel? So I want to encourage you to read a book that I've recommended in the email. That book is called One Blood by Reverend John Perkins. Reverend Perkins is 90 years old, and as an African American, he has seen it all. His view and perspective is refreshing, convicting, challenging, and hopeful. And I'd like to challenge you to read it and listen to what he has to say as an elder statesman, calling us to find peace and unity in this hope of the gospel. I've been learning some things, been reminded of some things. For instance, there's only one human race. That's it. All of us created in the image of God. Where we have fallen woefully short is to affirm the dignity of each other, to recognize that each of us is fully made in the image of God. There is no room for degrading, mocking, belittling the image of God in somebody else. That's not just a sin against them, it's a sin against God. So we have to search ourselves and say, is there any way in which I personally do this? Is there any way that we have done this as a church? Or are there things we should have said or should have done that we didn't say or do out of ignorance or for whatever reason that has contributed to people feeling like they're made in less of an image than we are? And so reading this book, looking at the website I'm sending you from Redeemer Church, where Tim Keller was pastor, with all the wonderful resources that are there, are a way for us to begin to listen, begin to learn, and begin to understand. So we can make changes in our lives and make changes, if we need to, in our church. So that we can carry forth the mission and vision that God has given to us. Like Paul says, any other means doesn't work. And when men stray from God, refuse to obey God, and refuse to recognize who he is, by just looking at creation, Paul says, then God gives us over to our own vices. And oh my goodness, we see the outcome of that in our world today. And it is ugly. It is terribly ugly. So Wooddale Church, don't lose heart. Take a mindset and an attitude that you and I, that we together are going to learn more about what God means when he speaks of justice in his word. That we're going to rediscover how to value and appreciate each other and encourage each other. God has made many different ethnicities. And though we're 99 point some percent all the same, those subtle little differences, it's the handiwork of God. Just look at creation, how he's made everything so unique and so beautiful. We have a bird feeder on the back of our deck, and I love seeing all the different kinds of birds that show up to feed on that, small and large, some very beautifully decorated, some are a little bit more plain, but so unique. They all have different sounds. You're probably hearing some of them on the video. That's how God's made you and me. And He wants us to celebrate what He celebrates. So pray with me that God would enable us to move forward in a powerful way that will bring lasting eternal change here, near, and far. A couple more things. First of all, want to say that we are getting ready to regather again. You'll hear me announce it in the message this weekend, so don't miss that. I'm looking forward to being able to be with you in the worship center relatively soon. And again, listen to the message, you'll get the date, all right? Hey, thanks so much for joining me on Fridays. Appreciate you very much. Appreciate your prayers and your support, your words of encouragement. These are difficult days, but our God is greater.